Right, I hope you are back feeling refreshed after that coffee break. A little bit longer than what we thought, but that was fine. So now we're very pleased to introduce two speakers from the Ashbourne Pavilion Sports Project. This is close to my heart in a way, because I'm sort of from Ashbourne. My son went to Aztecs, the football club in Ashbourne, and was using the old pavilion many years ago now. And my granddaughter now goes to St Oswald's Primary School, and I believe that they are one of the partners in the scheme. So it's an interesting project close to my heart as well. So we're going to have a talk by Norman Harris. Norman is a trustee of the Ashbourne Pavilion Sports and Community Partnership. I think that was set up in around 2017 to develop the project. So it'd be interesting to get that background information about the project and the challenges of getting that off the ground, followed by James Dacre, who is the principal architect of FPCR Environmental and Design Limited. And after that, put questions in the chat as usual, and any questions you want to pose to Norman and James, then there'll be that joint answer session later on. So very welcome to Norman. I'll pass you over.
Thank you very much. Can I refer to the slides that you've got for me? That's it. Super. Right. I'm going to be using the presentation that was created before I took this over by Albert Golding. I'm standing in for him today. He's taken the opportunity to go to fly to New York to see his first grandchild once they opened up the travel corridors. So he's over in New York for 10 days and asked me to step in for him. So as Helena just said, I'm a volunteer trustee and I sit on the partnership committee as a community representative now. So referring to the slide, if you'd like to go to the next one. Thank you very much. Pictures of the old pavilion. Not very good pictures really, but they just show you, I think maybe the state. It was almost derelict, this building, and it was an embarrassment to offer to visiting teams. And we're talking about, you know, a 50-year-old, more than 50-year-old building. It had run its course and it was not fit for purpose. A little bit about it. Next slide, please. It was built, I think it was more than 50 years ago, by public donation as a memorial building, as a memorial pavilion for those who died in the Second World War. There's a certain amount of fame that goes with it, because in 1966, when the World Cup was in England, UK anyway, the West German football team actually used the recreation ground and the pavilion as a training ground before their matches. I think that's its only claim to fame. Since then, it's fallen into disrepair, and as I say, it's an embarrassment. Next slide, please. The partnership formed, the Ashbourne Sports and Community Partnership, ASCP, formed in 2018, realizing that, you know, we couldn't go on as a group. offering these facilities to other people. So a group of volunteers, mainly from the local clubs, as you can see in that on that slide, they mainly sports club. Zone 6 was a was a youth club that's been shut down. It's been replaced. There's the primary school is represented there. The town council, as I say, most of the rest are sports teams, and I'll make some comment on that later on about the community aspect. So next slide, please, again. Constructing the pavilion. Let me just find my notes here. And I think maybe this is meant to be looking back on what the main issues were. I'm not going to go into this in a great amount of detail, but certainly the lease has tended to kind of come out right at the end of the job as the main issue, because it's a 50-year lease, and yes, okay, there's a lot of negotiation had to go on with the district council, but it's been a constant threat to progress throughout the last 15 to 18 months, and technically it's still not the lease is still not signed, but it's imminent, and we've had to take all kinds of different ways of getting around the lack of a signed lease. Very difficult, because funders don't like to give their money to people to the organisations who haven't completed negotiations with a lease. So that's been the main problem. The contract price has to fit the funding available, and we couldn't enter into a contract without the full contract price being funded. This led to a very kind of long exercise, intense exercise of value engineering, trying to reduce the contract price down to the levels of funding that we got. Project management. I'm not saying that I don't think the project management was an issue. The partnership were involved in more activities than just building the new pavilion. That there were separate contracts with utilities companies, including an £18,000 high voltage cable diversion, which the partnership had to bear the cost of, and do a lot of the organisation involved in that, like the health and safety and risk assessment side of it. So that was a challenge as well. Also, the unknowns during the period, the COVID materials, price increases, we had to stick with that and run with that as we went along. Staying with the project. I mean, I just got one word there: determination, just to stay with it and get around the problems as you go through it. Next slide, please. So I've got this as slide 5. So the most important bullet point here is the first one, the establishment of a group of committed sports and community volunteers who possess the right skill sets, such as funding, construction, procurement, project management, skill sets to enable the project to be pushed forward. And of course, the partnership, being a group of volunteers, couldn't do everything themselves. We had to make sure we had a strong set of professionals behind us, and we were able to get that, led by James Dacre, who comes on next from FPCR. Next slide, please. So as I say, pre-construction, we established a consultancy team. There were 2 attempts at planning, And also, obviously, we had to think about sourcing the funding, telling a good story, and giving the funders the ability to back this project. Principal funders. Well, out of the principal funders on the list, the main ones were Derbyshire Dales Football Foundation and the England and Wales Cricket Board. Interesting though, just to comment on Severn Trent Water, they turned out to be a funder who helped us considerably with the community interest side of the project, and the funding we got from them was £120,000 for it was capital funding for the community area. That was the biggest grant that I think that's been given in Derbyshire for a community project. Next couple of slides show where we are getting to. So if you can get put the next one on. That's an architect's impression of what it's going to look like. It looks pretty much like this already. We're not far away from having this this building handed over. This is taken from the town side of the building, and you can see that's the community room in the middle there with all the windows, and there's a big patio there. It's nice. The next picture shows, if you can move on to the next slide, please. Well, that's an actual picture of the construction work going on from inside the building, obviously, and overlooking the recreation ground and the Henmore Valley. Quite a nice. You can imagine there's going to be quite a nice vista there from off the patio. So yes, next one, please. So the new pavilion facilities will not only provide the club changing facilities, but also a community room with a bar and kitchen, and that lovely patio you saw on that previous slide, which the patio, as I'm repeating myself a little bit maybe, the patio commands an excellent panoramic view over the recreation ground and the Henmore Valley. So it's going to be a nice place to sit out in the sunshine and have a glass of wine or pizza or something like that. On the community side, the partnership intends to offer local community facilities for my list is a little bit updated from this one. It's youth employability, health and well-being courses, an online learning centre, which is going to be there mainly for older people, and trying to sort problems out that they have in using internet technology, digital technology, which is going ahead all the time and leaving behind older people who can't use it. So there's a push to create a digital learning centre, and that's going very well. Next slide, please. Right, so this is the last slide, and this is Albert trying to gather together the additional benefits that this project will have. Well, perhaps is already having, but it certainly will have on the local community. I'm not going to read them all out, but my comment is that the eventual completion of this project will help to give the Ashbourne community a much greater confidence to manage regeneration projects like this in the future, and perhaps to remember that most of the difficulties that you encounter in a project like this can be overcome with enough dogged perseverance. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you.
Bit early, I'm sorry, bit early, but
right. Are there any questions for Norman now, or is James with us?
James is with us.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay. Well, we'll go straight with James, and then people can pose the questions after we've heard from both. Over to you, James. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hannah. Great. Well, yeah, I'm James Dacre. I'm Principal Architect at FPCR, Environment and Design. We're based in Derby, just outside Derby. We have a couple of other offices around the nation. But yeah, our head office is in Derby. So yeah, if Sky's okay, just to jump straight onto the slides, that'd be brilliant. Yeah, I'll talk you through the project from sort of the architectural perspective. Brilliant. Yes. So is it possible to get them full screen?
They only seem to go up like that, James.
Is it on PDF?
Yes.
I think, is it? Let me just have a look. If you do try Control L, might take it full screen.
That doesn't seem to.
Okay. Do you want to zoom out of it? Because you're just chopping off half the slide a little bit.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. So if you just scroll down, Sky, that'd be great. Just quick contents. Just do a quick introduction who we are. Our work at the early stages, just to tell you a little bit of the story. Dealing with a bit of the planning conditions, which you'll see is relevant for the construction stage. Talking about the construction itself, and then just summarising with a few key lessons learnt. So yeah, if you carry on, Sky. A bit about us. Yeah, just keep going. Sorry. Yeah, like I said, we're based in Lockington Hall, and the next page probably is the main one. So yeah, there's me. And my director Keith Nye. So he was he's in charge of the architecture and landscape. We're a multidisciplinary practice. We have ecologists as well, and master planning, urban design. But yeah, Keith actually lives just outside Ashbourne, and that's where the interest in the project came from. His kids are part of the cricket club they've worked through the age ranges, under 15s, etc. And I think Keith actually sometimes is the umpire for the youth teams, and occasionally gets dragged into bat for the teams, but he's not so much now. But yeah, our key roles are architectural design, landscape design. As Norman said, we were the lead consultant, so coordinating all the other inputs from others. Principal designer, so kind of in charge of health and safety, pre-construction, and contract administrator, so it's a traditional procurement. So we're the sort of go between the contractor and the partnership. And we did a bit of ecology consultancy as well. So yeah, next one. So for anyone that doesn't know, that's where the pavilion in the park is. It's in the Ashbourne Recreation Ground, just to the east of the historic core, and yeah, behind St Oswald's School, just off Cockayne Avenue car park, for anyone that knows. Yeah, next one. This is the existing memorial pavilion. Obviously, as Norman said, it kind of has become dilapidated, and obviously at the time it served its purpose, and being a memorial pavilion it was important to respect that and try and look at if we could keep it. So our first stage involvement, if you carry on, Sky, I think we did look at trying to keep it, but a summary of the key decisions we made was, obviously the main one was to demolish the dilapidated memorial pavilion, and that was not an easy decision, but we did look at trying to keep it, as you'll see in a minute. And then obviously to replace it with a new build, purpose-built design. Another key decision was to position it closer to the pitches, but that also helps with the ease of construction, providing a space for actually having a site compound. But it also meant we could provide private parking for where the memorial pavilion once was. And another key design decision was to make sure we had a much larger southern and western terrace. So as Norman said, it would be a nice sun trap for enjoying the park and the fields. Next one. Yeah, so the early stages involvement. So the next slide shows how we did look at keeping the pavilion and extending to the west, or actually going upwards. And unfortunately, the cost implications of this were just unfeasible. And at the beginning, the budget was very tight, so these options just were fairly quickly realised were not possible, unfortunately. But from a sustainability perspective, always try and keep what you've got. In this case, it just wasn't really feasible. So the next one, we then quickly realised that the new build was the most efficient way of meeting the sporting funders' requirements. So a key thing was that the funders, Football Foundation, England Wales Cricket Board, had very strict design guidance on the changing rooms, and that forced a certain size that needed to be. So using a central corridor for the 4 changing rooms was the most efficient way to go about that, and providing a sort of a larger club room to serve the community aspects of the building, facing the southern and western terrace. So yeah, we quickly got a consultant team to sort of test this and see how it would work. So next slide. A key thing that we did was to explore the different material finishes that we could do as part of a public consultation with the town. And glad to be able to say that the consultation we did back in 2018, the materials sort of selected by the public are still the ones chosen in the building that's being built now. So next slide. Just a very quick run through. So as Norman said, we did actually do 2 planning applications. So the first one was in March 2018, which received approval by committee in May of that year. And unfortunately, the consultation with the key funders, Football Foundation in particular, unfortunately, they didn't seem to want to talk to us until we'd had a planning approval received. And so after liaising with them, we realised that in order to meet the community aspects of the building that were separate to the Football Foundation requirements, we did need to increase the size of the building. So you can sort of see the slight change. Overall, it's roughly the same design, but the actual footprint has increased for the part of the second planning application. But thankfully, because we were within the year, we sort of qualified as the free go, so it didn't cost the partnership anymore. Then we quickly moved on to trying to get some tenders back, and this resulted in the tenders received were beyond the budget of the project. So we knew that we couldn't reduce the building size just because of the requirements of the partnership and the sporting funders. And so we had to look at how we could reduce the specification, and that took about a year to do that. So if you go on to the next slide, we're jumping onto the planning conditions. So it became clear that one of the funders, the ECB, England Wales Cricket Board, I'll explain more in a sec, but they had a sort of time scale for it. So towards the end of 2020, we quickly needed to get the planning conditions resolved, particularly the ones that were pre-commencement conditions. So as in you had to resolve them with the council before you started on site. So one of the key ones was resolving what to do with the memorial. So on the memorial tower building, there was a plaque, and we proposed to keep that and put it within the building as a memory of what was there before. So that will be inside the main hall, not the club room, but the hallway, and propose a new plaque that would suit the design of the pavilion. So this is going to be in aluminium and of a dark grey colour to match the roof and the doors and windows. And there will be a memorial bench opposite for a space for contemplation and memory. So yeah, next slide, please. Another condition was to resolve the materials for the project. So these 3 materials were approved pre-commencement. It wasn't absolutely necessary to do so before, but we were trying to save costs for the partnership and resolve all the conditions in one application. Yeah, so on the next one, I won't talk about this too much, but part of our sort of CDM 2015 health and safety regs requirements was to look at how to deal with a site, and a very constrained site with a public car park to the north, a public field to the south, and an existing community building to the east, and some council huts to the east as well, that all had to be negotiated and still in use during the construction stages. So we go to the next slide. I think we're on to construction now. So the ECB, a big funder, probably about a quarter, if not a third of the funds, required that to actually be able to get the funding, we had to have started on site and submitted our invoices by the end of January this year. So it was a quick thing to get on site and get things moving. And thankfully, we were able to receive those monies to start getting the funds going, the build going. So that was a key moment on the programme. So next slide. I won't talk about this much, but if you can ask, if you're interested about sort of site health and safety delivery, but the point was it was very constrained. So if you just skip on to the next slide, that's fine. As Norman has said, the lease was a very difficult and a key constraint. The Football Foundation would not release monies until the lease had been signed. So hopefully this week, fingers crossed, that will all go through. Next page. So onto the construction, the enabling works, we had to do a high voltage cable diversion. We had to provide a new water supply, and some existing council huts were actually fed off the existing pavilion. So we had to resolve how to deal with those. The council have since replaced them with something else. Next one. So the site progress itself, this is just a few site progress photos. Generally, it went fairly well. However, there were, with combination of Brexit and the pandemic, there were some very key items which did slow things down, which I'll talk about now in more detail. So the first one on the next page, the external walls. We had a delay on the brick delivery, about 8 weeks. We did look at alternative bricks, but because of the public consultation and that they've been chosen and already approved as part of the planning conditions, it was decided to keep them and just handle the delay. And Rock were able to make up the time lost. And yeah, next one. Another one that was a big issue was the roofing sheet. So there was a nationwide shortage of aluminium standing seam roofing sheet. We just literally couldn't get any. And the 3-month delay they were suggesting was just not tenable for a 9-month construction project. So we had to change to a steel specification, thankfully able to keep the same colour. So majority of the people that appreciate the building, you can't really see the roof anyway, apart from a distance. So it wasn't a major problem. And thankfully the virgin eaves were able to remain as per the original design. But it meant we had to go back and discharge that planning condition again. Next one. The internal finishes, the original design intent was quite a robust finish, so fair face concrete block, birch veneer plywood ceilings. So again, robust but also fairly cost effective with exposed M&E ducting. This had to change because the plywood cost just went through the roof during the project. And so the client partnership agreed to change it to plasterboard ceilings with a paint finish to the walls and to the ceilings, which actually looks quite good. Another key thing was the colouring of the cubicles. It was quite a key design feature to have bright, bold colours against the sort of plain backdrop. The supplier, I think twice, told us that the colours we'd chosen were unavailable. So we had to go back to client and review the colours selection again. And it was quite critical because some of the doors are going to be painted the same colours to match. So yeah, it was a bit of coordination to do there. But that should be in place now. I'm going to the site on Friday, so fingers crossed it will be there. Okay, next one. The external doors, this was an interesting one. So there was a big delay on this because of the integral blinds. So there was a delay in getting the building watertight. And NROC did their best to work around this, but we all kind of agreed that it was worth waiting and dealing with that delay, because these are quite a key design feature for a sort of a passive security deterrent. So they'll be, when they're closed, you can't see inside the building, but they also provide a bit of solar shading in the summer. Next one. Drainage diversion I won't talk about, but dealing with utilities companies quite a challenge, and we'll just skip past that one. That's fine. Positive one to end on, the external finishes, because we did the original specification in 2019. By the time we got to actually purchasing these, they'd become obsolete, and the partnership tried to find another source locally. As part of one of their benefiting kind donations. They managed to achieve that with the bar and the kitchen and the clock, a few other things. But unfortunately, again, the one that was chosen got absorbed by another company. But the key point was we managed to work with the manufacturer, and they were able to source as a return stock item at a massive discount. So that was a huge positive, managing to find an item that otherwise would be wasted. Brand new, just was returned as part of another project. So I think we're able to reuse that. I think the last slides is just, oh no, there's one more. Just quickly on sustainability. I just wanted to share about how sustainability it should be integrated. So it's not so much something you see in all cases. So obviously, solar photovoltaics, for example, are an obvious one that's good to add, but our approach is very much make it integral to the building. So we've got more than required insulation for the building, making sure you've got thermal bridging details sorted, large south-facing glazing to the club room to sort of benefit natural solar heat gains in the winter. Got some heat recovery ventilation in the club room. And then materials chosen is trying to use very high recycled content and using local suppliers. And then just finally, aluminium obviously could be recycled at the end of the life, and using some timber where we can, which acts as a carbon store. So the next one. So that's the Derbyshire Dales Council members visit, which was in the paper just last week. Local MP Sarah Dines was there, and it was very positive feedback. Even though it wasn't quite finished. So that's good. And then just to finish on the next slide, a couple of key lessons learned. Importance of having good site information and surveys. Make sure you understand the key funders requirements and how they'll impact not only the design but the cash flow, as in if they've got any requirements for the release of the monies. Good working relationships with a local planning officer. Be aware of any planning conditions, especially any pre-commencement. Norman touched on this, but I think one of the key successes for the partnership was that they did devote time and resources, people, subcommittees to handling the build, handling funding, and without them, I don't think the project would have happened. So hats off to the volunteers of the partnership for making this happen, really. Appointing consultants as you need. Sustainability, I think it's just budgeting it in. They do generally sort of green sustainable items cost more, but they save money in the long run. So that's something to consider. Definitely local public support was important, having the media on board, local council on board. Just a couple of final things, allowing enough time for the different construction stages and seeking advice and programming if you're not sure about it. Definitely allow some contingency in the budget. It almost always gets used. Use a building contract so you're safeguarding yourselves and the contractor. Consult on utilities as early as you can. And I think just wanted to end on this point, just foster a cooperative spirit rather than often in the construction industry, it can be a bit of a blame culture. And I think one of the real positives of this project was that everyone was working in good faith. The contractor and NROC were excellent. Obviously Jordan, the managing director, grew up in the town, so he was quite keen to leave a legacy. And I think the partnership as well, working very closely with ourselves and the project team, just really working together, trying to just overcome the many hurdles that came in a positive spirit. I think that's it really. Just the last slide, just for Q&A.
Thank you, James. That was really, really interesting story of how it's all come about, especially with the challenges and the pandemic, the delays, as you've said and pointed out, the delays with the delivery of key construction materials. It must have been very frustrating for everybody concerned. Yeah, we've had a couple of questions here come through. So maybe direct this to Norman. It's, what legal structure did you go with for the new hall to set it up as a, do you know, well, it's a, I think you're a community interest or a CIO. Is that the model that you went with?
The CIO, yes.
CIO. So
the partnership is a CIO. Gosh, I don't know what that stands for.
It's a charitable incorporated
organisation.
So
okay.
It is a charitable body, but it's got the incorporated status as
That's
well.
Right.
So it's
That's
got
right.
that limited liability on the trustee. So that's sort of a really good model for a new venture to go down. I mean, I'm sure lots of the delegates know we've got model documents of governing documents. So anybody going down the route of the CIO model, we've got an acre model document that can be adopted for new build and also for existing village halls that want to convert to the CIO. Right.
Yeah, the village hall aspect was very important in terms of the VAT, VAT payments as well. So we got what's the word? We got round the VAT having to pay VAT through the contractor with the village hall aspect of it.
And being a new build as well, I think it's is it 0 VAT on the new build side. So this one is to be directed to, I think, James. Did energy efficiency play any part on the decision to demolish the old structure? So I know you've mentioned that you've got sustainable measures in the build design, but was that a main feature with the old building?
Yeah, I think certainly with the building as it was, there was no insulation. It was pretty much solid wall construction, and so it would have needed an awful lot of insulation internally, which was another reason why we had to go to new build, because just the efficiencies of modern construction meant that the space that could be created would be done a lot more efficiently. So yeah, I think upgrade. Not saying it was impossible to upgrade. It was just cost prohibitive really, and wouldn't have met the requirements of the client and the funders.
Well, it's a key topic, isn't it? I think to make it any building, any community building, that was our topic yesterday about becoming net zero as we're moving forward. So another question here: what kind of experience does a volunteer project manager ideally need? That's quite is that not a normal?
Well,
you've got some probably quite good project experience, Norman, but we know you need a strong strong volunteers with experience and skills and dedication to move a big new build project forward. What do you feel that are the necessary skills?
I think, I mean, you can gather together people that can be proactive. I think that's one of the main things. Try and be proactive in getting the project through. The major things are, I think it's, you need somebody who knows a little bit about construction. If you've got people who know a bit about funding, which we had through Albert Golding in particular, and some obviously other people who had skills that just fitted in. It was almost as if we didn't try too hard to get certain people, but it just worked for us. We just clicked because when we didn't have the expertise in the partnership, we went out and found it, and that was the way of getting around well, that was the way of kind of making sure that the partnership's objectives were going to be achieved. So there was a tremendous amount of work went on behind the scenes, unbelievable, and never really been involved in that before. But it's there's, you know, if you had to pay for that, it'd be another million, I think, almost.
Yeah. I think from experience, I've not been involved with one, but from what people say when they've built new village halls or pavilions, it's when from the outset, it's great to have this vision and this aim, but the amount of time and energy when they look back, you know, they're totally underestimated what commitment it is to undertake. Fantastic achievement at the end of the day, but I think you've got to have dedicated people who know a little bit about, as you say, construction industry, and enough people to drive it forward. The enthusiasm and the drive are the key things.
Yeah, I think it's crucial that you get enough volunteers, you know, with a range of abilities, and that's very, very difficult. I'm looking at kind of smaller projects now in Ashbourne, and it's very difficult to get proactive volunteers. Let's just leave it at that, I think.
Yeah. Well, coming out of the Acre survey, the national survey that they do every year, every 10 years, one of the main findings was that it's increasingly difficult to recruit volunteers and retain existing volunteers. So it is for all charities, all types of charities, that is one of the major barriers at the moment. So I should think you must have found it very frustrating with increasing building costs over the last couple of years at a time where you were trying to do cost cutting. That must have been very frustrating and difficult process to go through, where you would decide where to cut back on those costs when you knew that the prices were increasing at the same time.
Yeah, and it's inevitably the sustainability items get the hit because they're the extras. So we did have heat recovery ventilation throughout, but that we had to just take it off half the building, unfortunately. So we have it for the club room, which is going to be used the most. But yeah, so that's unfortunately what happens often.
Yeah. Was there any particular reasons for the delay in getting the lease agreed? You know, the terms of the lease and the length of the lease, the 50-year lease. Was there any reason why there was a delay in that?
I don't know enough about what went on to be able to give a good reply to what you're asking, Lena. It was very frustrating from my point of view. We could have done with a couple of people who were volunteers and had legal a legal background. It seemed unreasonable to me that we'd agreed heads of terms, kind of October 2020, and then it took another year plus to actually agree all the lease terms, and none of the money that was money was being held all over that period because the lease wasn't agreed. It was a lot
of it was to do
very
with
difficult thing to do. I don't think we could do something like that again. We had to enter into we couldn't enter into a contract with the contractor. We had to give him a letter of intent, and that lasted nearly the whole period of construction, and that put a risk on the partnership that we shouldn't have had to do. But you can complain all you want, but
one of those hurdles that you just have to, one of those hoops.
You've got to get out and get on with it. Yeah.
One thing I'd like to just point out, when you were talking about cash flow, James pointed out cash flow as a major issue that you had to juggle with, and I'm just going to mention here that Acre, our national body, they run on behalf of Dacre the National Village Hall Loan Scheme. So anybody wanting funding and they've got this sort of cash flow problem, they can apply to this loan scheme. It's 20,000-ish, perhaps a little bit bigger for some projects. I don't know what the maximum amount is off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a loan scheme that projects can apply into to get over that problem. So if it's the last little bit of money that they haven't secured and it's preventing them from going ahead from a project and drawing down other funding.
Yeah.
And it is a loan scheme and it's on good preferable rates. But I've only learned recently, I think that this is government money, obviously through Dacre money, but the government have been supporting village and community halls with this sort of loan scheme, I think for 100 years, because it goes way back to supporting village halls during the period of the First and Second World Wars. I won't go on about the history of it, but it's a long, well-established commitment by the government that they recognise the value of village and community halls. So they've always had that scheme in place, and it's being managed at the moment by Dacre. So for anybody listening today, if you're running similar schemes, or if you do need it for this project maybe, to apply for the loan, there is that facility. It's you know, sort of to help cash flow issues there. So that's something to bear in mind. We have, I think we're about running out of time. I'm just see if there's any last questions that we can actually.
There was a question which I think is more directed at you, Helena, which is it more difficult for a parish council to raise funding for a project than a trust?
Well, parish councils, being statutory bodies, cannot go obviously to funders that are charitable trust funds, because they are purely for charities. But they may have access. Parish councils actually are in a really good position, because they can apply to get a loan from the Public Work Loan Fund, which is a national, I think it's part of the Treasury, but they can actually apply for loan funding when it can be paid back over a long period of time. So if it's for a capital project, a big capital project, and you say need $500,000 or whatever, a loan, then that money, the way it works is that money would be paid back a bit like a mortgage over, say, 20, 25 years. And it would mean, being statutory funding, that they'd have to get consensus from their community, and it would be paid back via a slight increase on the precept. So people are getting, actually, in essence, the community are paying for the facility over a very long period of time, but they are benefiting from it, if you see what I mean. So if anybody wants to know more about it, it's something that Derbyshire Association of Local Councils, or any, your associations of local councils in other counties that are here today, will know about that facility that's available to town and parish councils. We see it as it's a good way of parish councils supporting village halls, whether it's a separate charitable organisation, whether it's a statutory village hall or a building. But the Public Work Loan Facility it's a really, really good way of getting large amounts of capital funding. So it's something for another day to talk about. And if anybody wants to find out more about it, get in touch with myself or Wendy Amis at Dacre to say more about that. But yeah, parish councils are restricted, that they cannot apply to charitable trust funds.
Thanks, Helena. I think Repton and Barwell have commented in the chat that the government and the National Lottery are good sources of funding to tap up for things like that for a parish council.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, funding is quite a big area, but if anybody wants specific information, they can go to their Acre network members to find out specific. This is for capital funding for build projects. Right. So thank you very much. That was really interesting to hear the project and how it's being developed. And you're not quite there yet. So have you got a launch date, opening date? When?
Yeah, it's the 3rd of January. yeah, hopefully 3rd of January.
Well, good luck that you've managed to reach your target, and I will look out for the news in the local paper, see how you're getting on. So thank you very much to Norman and James. Really interesting to hear about that project. It's really good to have a case study that people can relate to. It's an actual project. And also it's nice to know of that there's architects and people with that experience of environmental and design, the whole wider environmental design issues, a company that's local. I hadn't heard of you before this project. So James, you might be a good contact. You may be able to get some referrals and things onto you if we get people asking what architects there are in the area. Okay, so we're now into sort of finishing the last 10-15 minutes. And what I'll do, what we did yesterday, we just Emma said a few words about the membership scheme. So anybody that's new today, we're just going to briefly go over that again. So I'll pass you to Emma to just explain about our new scheme.
Thanks, Helena. And I'd just like to applaud actually the partnership for really creating a sports facility that they are making open to the wider community as well, so that it's not just there for the sports, but it's really becoming a community hub. And we look forward to working with them on the digital inclusion part of the work that they're doing there. So well done for that. That's great. So Sky is going to share some slides, and I just want to quickly talk today a bit about what we do, our work. So if you can click onto the next slide. So we, as I'm sure most of you know, run a diverse range of projects across Derbyshire, but with the community hubs and community safety in mind today, because of the theme of today's conference, the areas of work are village halls and community buildings, advice service, our digital hubs, and also the Willow project. Next slide, please. So for the village and community halls, I'm sure you're all aware that we advise and support and champion local halls and buildings and offer a variety of specialist services. And it is a unique service. There aren't any other organisations that have the understanding of the halls, and ones that are run by parish councils or ones that are charitable. There's a whole range of different types of halls, and we are the organisation with the backing of Dacre, the national network, that provides unique and specialist advice. Okay, Sky. So digital hubs we have touched on already today, actually. Bev spoke about them earlier, but we are looking to establish digital hubs in village halls. We're also looking to perhaps create digital hubs in some community food projects as well, because we've really seen a link between digital inclusion and financial inclusion. So people, especially post-COVID, when everything went digital, if you don't have access to digital services, then you are losing out on so many other aspects of life, and that can be disadvantaging people financially. Next slide, please, Guy. And the Willow project is a fairly new project to Rural Action Derbyshire. It's been going over a year now, but it's to raise awareness of rural domestic abuse. So it's to deliver awareness training to help people, anybody, members of the general public or people that perhaps work on the front line that might come into contact with people who may be victims of domestic abuse. And it's about coercion and control. It's not just about physical abuse. So it's free training to people within Derbyshire, which is funded by the Police and Crime Commissioner. And it is one of the areas that she is concentrating on, as she mentioned in her talk earlier today. But as well as the training, we can also give free talks to organisations and groups who work or live in Derbyshire. And these can take place in a village hall or any part of the community. And the images you can see on the slide are taken from our film that we had made. It's a 20-minute film, which is used during the training. It's split into 4 separate episodes. And it's a really good way of demonstrating how just anybody in the community can be experiencing real difficulties in their relationship, but that might be hidden or even just ignored. So it might be clear that somebody is having difficulties, but it's a difficult subject, and so people just ignore it. So what we want to do is highlight what the signs are and what people can do to help. Okay, Sky. So we've also heard today about the benefits of community hubs, more cohesive, resilient community, integrated services, and it's a way of really a hall being able to operate as part of a wider community rather than a standalone building. So identifying what the gaps are perhaps in the services and what the provision is locally, and how you as a trustee of a village hall or community building could perhaps step in and offer something more than you are currently. So that's really the point of the conference at the moment, is just to help you see other things that perhaps you could be doing for your community. Okay, next slide, please. So we have experience and expertise. We've been advising village halls since 1924. We also have decades of experience with community engagement, and we very much believe strongly in collaboration with other support providers, and that is key. I think collaboration is key in so many areas, as it was talked about with the Ashbourne Pavilion partnership, that it's so important to get everybody on the side and working together. And so we can help set up a digital hub, a community kitchen or other community pantry or shop. We've got toolkits, we can provide case studies, we've got networks and champions that can support you if you want to look at doing something slightly different with your hall than you are at the moment. Okay, Sky. So as I said, we offer a unique service, and there is only one Helena. Helena's experience and expertise is well recognised, I think, for many of the halls in the county. Our experience in community engagement to understand the needs in your area and provide you with dedicated information and advice. So there's just some quotes from various bits of feedback we've had recently. My go-to place for information. Helena's very professional and knows what she's talking about. And people really wouldn't have known where to turn without Helena's help during COVID, and the service is priceless. So as an Acre Network member, we do have the expertise of Acre behind us as well. And there's a whole network of organisations that provide advice to village halls. So if we can't help with something, we can usually find somebody that can. Okay, next slide. So we are introducing a membership scheme for village halls and community buildings. Now, this will allow us to provide the best possible service that we can to support you going forwards with your halls. So you'll have access to updates, changes to legislation, help with funding, training, and one-to-one consultancy will also be available at a discounted rate. And membership is affordable, and I think you'll find it is very good value. Next slide, please. So you'll get full access to regular members-only newsletters and members-only digital resources. So we're still going to be communicating with all of the halls that we currently communicate with, but to get full access to all of the information you would need to be a member. You'll get discounts on Acre information sheets and tickets for training and on consultancy. Okay, Sky. We're going to be developing a corporate partnership and a business and trade member directory. So this will be to help you source suppliers and professionals that you need for your hall, whether it's a great big build, as has happened in Ashbourne, or it could be a fairly small piece of work. But we'll be able to provide a list, a sort of one-stop shop of businesses that you might like to use. Okay, Sky. So the priority for membership is to make it affordable, is to keep it simple, and to give you a choice of payment options. So if you join before the 1st of April next year, the cost is only £50 plus VAT, which I think you'll agree works out at very good value at £1.15 pence per week. After that time, the membership will go up to £75. So we're introducing a discount. Basically, we'll be sending information out, and if people sign up before the 1st of April, which is when the membership scheme kicks in proper, you'll get a discount. So you'll join before the 1st of April, but that will be a membership until the end of March 2023. And we would like to offer direct debit discounts as well. So thank you to you, Halls, for all your hard work. We hope that you value and appreciate all of the things that we do to support you, and we look forward to working with you going forward. So thanks for that. You can unshare your screen, I think, and I think that's all I need to say. So Helena, back over to you.
Oh, thank you, Emma. That's great. That's really covered the launching our new membership scheme. So that's really covered that really well. I'm conscious of time, so I'll wrap up quite quickly. There's just last few slides. I just wanted to point one or two things out. So we heard yesterday the title for Village Halls Week that's coming up. There's the dates there, 24th to the 30th of January 2022. So if you want to start preparing, there will be resources and materials will be available from Dacre shortly to give ideas and help Village Halls to participate in Village Halls Week. And the theme and title of it this year is Innovating for the Future. So that fits in very much with this post-COVID idea and people refreshing and restarting again. So that's just a date for your diary. Next slide, please, Sky. Okay, also Dacre are doing, as I think most of you know, that we're doing this national safeguarding project for 2 years. This is coming towards the end of the 2nd year. So it's just a reminder really that the importance of safeguarding to all village halls. The idea is to raise awareness so that all village halls across the country can put policies in place and good practice and fully aware of their legal requirement of safeguarding. And actually it's quite apt because it's National Safeguarding Week this week. If you want to download, you can get information from our website, which is on the next slide, but also the Anne Craft Trust. There's lots of resources and information on their website. So there's a link for you as well. Next slide. Yeah, that's our aim, is to increase awareness, as I have said, and the importance of safeguarding. So that's just a link to our safeguarding webpage on our website. Right. So yes, also a lot of you will be aware that the centenary celebration, Dacre had this idea of having a doomsday book for village halls in England, and it's an online facility where halls can sign the doomsday book, which would be a fantastic register. And you can upload a photograph and write a little bit about your hall if you want to. But if you want to go on that website, you can see what other halls have already gone on there. So, okay, so really what I want to say now is to thank all the speakers, from Angelique this morning, Police and Crime Commissioner, Beverly Parker, Christine Nichols, and Norman and James. We've thoroughly enjoyed listening to all your stories and great ideas. Remember to look at the Warm Hubs video. We'll send you the link, but that's the Community Action Northumberland video. I think you'll find that really inspirational to read through there. We also must thank very much so our sponsors for the event, ESP, IT providers, and of course Norris and Fisher have very kindly sponsored us today. Do look on our website if you want to get links to those businesses and to read a little bit more about them, but it's their support that's been able to give us the free conference. And thank you for attending, of course. So we're delighted that you could join us. Before we go though, I'll just go over what the agenda is for tomorrow, day 3, our final day. So the title is Post-COVID, Adapt and Modernise. Really follows on from what we've been talking about today, looking at, a little bit wider and being more responsive to the needs and the demands of the community. Things are changed, things don't always stay static. So adapt and modernise is a good theme. So we've got some really, really good and inspirational speakers tomorrow. The opening will be by Louise Beaton. She is a village hall consultant and also Acre trustee. I think you will have perhaps heard her name come up in the past when we've been talking about a lot of the COVID information and the resources that came out. Louise had a huge input into all of that, which we were extremely grateful for. Then there will be a short session by Dr. Tom Archer, who wrote the report of the findings from the Acre National Survey that I mentioned early. So that will be interesting to hear the key findings from that survey. That will be followed by Chris Coucher from the Plunkett Foundation on things like community ownership, community cafes, community pubs, that sort of thing. So that's a really pertinent session. And then followed on from there, it's Dr. Gareth Morgan, who is talking about charity trading law and what the implications are for providing services that might be outside of your charitable objectives. So really good speakers. It is the last day. Hopefully you can join us tomorrow. The slides will be available and we are recording the sessions anyway if you're not able to join in.